From the loss of Blue Origin's rocket and pad, to the response,
we've got the right safety procedures really laid in to keep personnel safe and to keep the public safe when we go through launch operations and we have a major anomaly.
to the repercussions.
Even if you're moving at pretty quick pace, that's going to take some serious time. That said, I think we can decouple it from the rest of the architecture and focus on their line of business and lander to make sure we keep America's return to the moon and moon base progressing.
The explosion of Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket during an engine fire test on May 28th caused waves throughout the spaceflight community. The incident also led to speculation and assumptions from those on the outside looking in as to what happened and what happens next. But a late-night update from Blue Origin CEO Dave Limp on June 1st sought to address some of that speculation, Limp vowing, quote, "We will fly again before the end of this year." So let's dive into the whole thing. What happened, the response, and what's expected to happen next. And if you want to go ahead and skip the backstory and jump right to our aerial video and the latest developments from Limp and others, skip to this time code right here. Otherwise, let's get started. On Thursday, May 28th, Blue Origin fueled its New Glenn rocket at Launch Complex 36 in preparation for a static fire test, a common precursor to launch, especially early on in a rocket's development. This was the company's third Glenn Stage 1, named No, It's Necessary, with its fourth Glenn Stage 2 stacked on top. Limp shared video of this GS2, serial number 4, performing its own hot fire test back in mid-December 2025. The booster, No, It's Necessary, was first unveiled to the public by another social media post from Limp on April 10th, 2026. The booster rolled out to Launch Complex 36 on May 4th, where it was then integrated with its upper stage for the NG-4 mission. On Friday, May 22nd, technicians hoisted the combined first and second stages onto the transporter erector to prepare for the hot fire test. You only have to go back to April 16th to see an example of what a successful New Glenn static fire test should look like. Teams performed a 19-second ignition of the 7 BE-4 engines ahead of launching the NG-3 mission. One key difference between that test and the ill-fated one on May 28th is that the static fire for NG-3 included the payload for AST Space Mobile on board. When the NG-4 static fire took place, and the majority of the 98-meter tall rocket was lost, the 48 Amazon LEO satellites set to fly on that mission were safely inside Amazon's payload processing facility at the Kennedy Space Center. Amazon confirmed to Spaceflight now that its satellites were unharmed by the incident. Shortly after the explosion, Blue Origin confirmed that there were no fatalities, and Space Launch Delta 45 added that there were no injuries as well. The Space Force also confirmed that night that the Eastern Range remained operational, paving the way for the launches of SpaceX Falcon 9 and United Launch Alliance Atlas V rockets the following day from Pads 40 and 41 respectively. During a press call on June 2nd, SLD-45 Commander Colonel Brian Chapman described the base response to the explosion at about 9 p.m. Eastern.
At 9:05, we activated our Emergency Operations Center and incident response. By 9:19, we had the full EOC up and operational, the Emergency Operations Center up and operational. And by 9:30, we had 100% accountability of all personnel in and around the area. What we saw was from the conservative safety measures that we employ with each and every hazardous activity we do out here, from the blast damage assessment roadblocks that we had put in place, we had no casualties, no injuries associated with this anomalous event.
As the investigation is still in very much its early phases, we wanted to get a better look at the extent of the damage that was done to the pad, so we took to the skies. Soaring at a safe distance from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station on Friday, May 29th, we got a better look at the impact from the blast the day prior. The twisted remains of the transporter erector were strewn along the ramp. One of the lightning protection towers was a heap of charred metal beside the flame trench, while the other showed a piece of metal support bent inward. Other views show apparent damage to various support buildings and structures. One silver lining, though, was that a flare stack was spotted actively burning, suggesting that the commodities storage tanks remained intact enough to warrant burning off what remained inside. Satellite imagery also helped tell the story. In an image ordered by Harry Stranger with Space from Space, captured by Planet Labs, shows the contrast before the explosion and after the fact. The blast danger area, or BDA, the minimum clear for personnel prior to the static fire, was described as being about 7,174 feet in diameter, or roughly 1.4 miles. Colonel Chapman says the furthest piece of damage collected in association with the explosion was about half a mile away.
There's some phenomenal data that we collected from this event, and the team will be pulling that together and analyzing that and feeding that into the models that we've been working over the last year on LOX methane analysis to give us a much granular perspective on what we expect to see in future events like that. As the BDS dropped and as the teams are now going out and looking at the surrounding area, we'll have a good feel for what overpressure impacts look like across the range and what that explosive arc look like in and around the area. Blue Origin also had some sensors and collected some data inside their integration facility and is working in lockstep with the government, both on the Space Force side and on the NASA side, to help us evaluate and work that data into our models. So looking forward to a deeper dive into that analysis.
Among those who got an aerial view of the explosion aftermath was NASA Administrator Isaacman. He flew aboard an agency helicopter to survey the scene at Launch Complex 36 on Friday, May 29th. In a social media post, Isaacman said he traveled to Florida with some senior engineers, saying he, quote, appreciated the opportunity to hear directly from those working through the aftermath and better understand the challenges ahead. There is a lot of work to do, but this is exactly why people chose careers in aerospace, whether at NASA, Blue Origin, or across the industry. The talent in this field thrives under pressure and performs at its best when solving the toughest problems, Isaacman wrote. We have been saying for months at NASA that we are not going to sit on our hands and wait for the capabilities necessary to achieve the nation's most pressing objectives. We are going to take an active role alongside our partners, just as we did in the 1960s, to overcome setbacks, remove obstacles, and deliver the intended outcomes. NASA is committed to helping the Blue Team recover, continue to advance their lunar lander, and get New Glenn back to launching as soon as safely possible. Specifics discussed during an all-hands with Blue Origin founder Jeff Bezos, Dave Limp, and the Blue Origin workforce was not released because it was a closed-door session. On Saturday, May 30th, Blue Origin shared a statement to its website regarding the status of the investigation. We have regained some access to Launch Complex 36 and are actively investigating the hot fire anomaly. We will start clearing the pad soon and have a good rebuild plan in place. The booster and GS2s in the integration facility appear healthy from quick looks. Colonel Chapman says Space Launch Delta 45 was able to return Safety Control Authority and the pad itself back over to Blue Origin during the afternoon of Sunday, May 31st. Just before midnight heading into June 2nd, Limp once again took to his social media to share yet another update with the public, which he called, quote, a bit of good news. The propellant farm, oxygen, liquid hydrogen, and LNG tanks are all in good shape. This is good luck because these are very long lead items. The water tower is also good. The big support tower is damaged, but it can be repaired in place rather than torn down and replaced. The booster never told me the odds, and the 3 GS2s that were on site in the integration facility also look good. Limp also gave an idea about what the rest of 2026 will look like for Blue Origin. That included shooting down one of the rumors that was percolating online. I've seen some speculation that we might move directly to the 9x4 configuration, but we won't do that. Rate manufacturing of 7x2 is going well, and we're going to continue that at pace as planned and store the stages for use. In addition, we had already been working for some time on eliminating our transporter erector in favor of an alternative vertical conop, and will now go directly to that. So, we don't need a new transporter erector. The mention of vertical integration is notable since some of the payloads awarded through the National Security Space Launch Program require vertical integration. This would allow Blue Origin to directly compete with United Launch Alliance for these missions. During a Space Florida board meeting on November 13, 2025, board members unanimously approved a $7.8 million agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation and Blue Origin. Planning documents filed with the St. Johns River Water Management District describe Blue Origin's vertical refurbishment facility as a 30.04-acre development called Project Alpha. The plot is located northwest of Armory Road and southwest of Central Control Road at Cape Canaveral, less than 2 miles from Launch Complex 36. In fact, you can see some of the progress at the site from the satellite image ordered by Harry Stranger and captured by Planet Labs on May 31st. During a Space Florida board meeting on November 13, 2025, board members unanimously approved a $7.8 million agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation and Blue Origin. $6.5 million of that would go towards, quote, the construction of vertical integration and refurbishment facility, and $1.3 million for LC-36 flight rate improvements. Limp closed his near-midnight post on June 1st by stating, "We will fly again before the end of this year. Gradatum ferociter." With the full scope of the work ahead known mainly by Blue Origin, it's difficult to know for sure how realistic another New Glenn flight in 2026 is in actuality. That said, while not apples to apples per se, there are some examples we can look to from recent history that can offer some general framing. Back in September 2016, during the fueling for a Falcon 9 static fire test, a helium tank rupture caused the rocket to explode at Space Launch Complex 40, destroying the rocket, the Israeli satellite called Amos 6, and damaging launch infrastructure. That damage was severe enough that the pad wouldn't be used again for launching a rocket until December 2017. Back in September 2016, SpaceX's pad at Vandenberg Space Force Base was still undergoing renovations, and Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center was still being rebuilt to support Falcon 9 launches. That left SpaceX with nowhere to go for launch for months. Kiko Donchev, vice president of launch at SpaceX and longtime employee, offered his thoughts on social media. He said that cleanup in the aftermath of something like this is one of the more challenging parts. In the initial days and weeks, you're using a scalpel, not a bulldozer. You have to first study and then precisely engineer the demo, as there are many unknowns with the state of the infrastructure. You also want to do your best to save the GSC that is still good. A miss on a piece of steel mass / center of gravity or unknown trapped pressure can quickly turn disastrous. The last thing you want to do is make a tough situation worse by getting someone hurt or worse. Cleanup has to be done with a sense of urgency but extreme precision. It's literally launchpad surgery. Donchev went on to say, quote, "It's critical you preserve any evidence that could inform root cause of the failure, which means you can't just throw everything in the trash. A piece of hardware in the rubble may hold the key to what happened." A more recent SpaceX incident happened on June 18, 2025 at SpaceX's testing site in South Texas called Massey's. An issue with one of the Block 2 Starship upper stages, tail number Ship 36, caused it to explode on the test stand. SpaceX shared in the first episode of its Starship docuseries that it was April 2026 by the time they had rebuilt the site and were ready to perform a static fire test at Massey's once again. In a post on X from his personal account, Isaacman recalled bringing pizzas to offer moral support to the SpaceX team after the Ship 36 explosion, stating in part, quote, "I have no doubt Blue will bounce back well. NASA will be there to help find solutions, and this time next year, excitement will be building for Artemis 3. The timing of the New Glenn anomaly was unfortunate for NASA. Earlier in the week on Tuesday, Isaacman led a news conference where the agency made a series of announcements related to the moon base program. Among those was dubbing the first flight of a Blue Origin Blue Moon Mark 1 cargo lander as the Moon Base 1 mission.
The Blue Origin Mark 1 Endurance lander will deliver multiple payloads to the Shackleton Connecting Ridge, a strategic area of the lunar South Pole. In addition to flying 2 NASA science payloads, SCALPs, a lunar retroreflector array, the mission objective is to demonstrate critical capabilities that reduce risk for the human landing system missions. On that note, every mission in support of the lunar base helps us learn and de-risk crewed missions, but this one is especially important because of the role Blue Origin plays in the Artemis program.
Earlier this year, the agency altered the Artemis missions to make Artemis 3 a low Earth orbit rendezvous with one or both of the human landing system landers, SpaceX's Starship, and Blue Origin's Blue Moon Mark 2. At the Moon Base press conference on May 26th, NASA also revealed that Blue Origin's cargo landers would deliver lunar terrain vehicles from Astrolab and Lunar Outpost to the surface of the moon providing mobility for the Artemis astronauts. Each LTV delivery has a price tag of $234 million. Another critical mission for the Blue Moon Mark 1 came back in September 2025. That's when NASA chose it to deliver Viper, or Volatile's Investigating Polar Exploration Rover, to the moon's surface. NASA said at the time, quote, "The rover has a targeted science window for its 100-day mission that requires a landing by late 2027. Blue Origin shared a demonstration of its Blue Moon offloader mechanism for Viper back in early May. Both the crew and cargo versions of Blue Moon tie intrinsically to the New Glenn rocket, as referenced by Blue Origin's Senior Vice President of Lunar Permanence, John Kalouris, during the NG-3 launch broadcast.
When we first built this mock-up of the Mark 1 lander, it was a little over 2.5 years ago. Since then, we were able to mature the design significantly. Through our engineering, we're actually able to save mass by deleting some insulation. You see the actual lander is much more gold, if you will, than the white lander that you see here. And one of the best things about that was being able to work with the New Glenn team. Having the launch vehicle as the same company's vehicle as the lander has allowed us to optimize the entire stack, the entire design. So we've gotten a lot more performance out of our lander thanks to New Glenn.
During an appearance at CNBC's CEO Council Summit on June 1st, Isaacman said NASA is looking to separate the Blue Moon landers from the New Glenn rocket in order to try and preserve the goal of landing astronauts on the moon in 2028.
We're going to do a little bit of a divide and conquer here on this, and you're going to have, aside from NASA's subject matter expertise in assisting with root cause and pad recovery, you're going to have some resources that are focused on the pad and the launch vehicle, and then NASA is going to be extremely focused in decoupling it from the rest of the architecture, the lander, because we need to keep that moving along. And the good news is they have that entire line of business, so continue to help them to the greatest extent possible, again, in support of Artemis 3 tests in 27 and 28. But, I think it's going to take a long time on the pad. We've got a lot of data. In fact, it was one of the first things my team made available is, hey, across history of human spaceflight, of every launch pad we ever built, every launch pad we ever had to rebuild, here's the timelines. Even if you're moving at pretty quick pace, that's going to take some serious time. That said, I think we can decouple it from the rest of the architecture and focus on their line of business and lander to make sure we keep America's return to the moon and moon base progressing.
Asked for clarification on whether there are other launch vehicles capable of taking over the moon-based missions for the time being, Isaacman said this.
It's a good question, but focusing it through the lens of America's return to the moon and building the moon base, the Mark 1, there's a lot of mass there and volume, so getting that in a fairing of a vehicle and then being able to send it to the moon, I think you're in Falcon Heavy land. You could potentially be in expendable Falcon Heavy land. That's not a good place we obviously want to be in. But if you're talking lower mass, for sure. I mean, Vulcan can put a lot of mass and send it to TLI. And then there's also creative ways, certainly with kick stages and transfer stages to get mass there. But in terms of heavy lift, real heavy lift, you've got SpaceX and Blue Origin, and obviously one of them's down a pad right now.
Brian Hughes, the newly named Center Director of the Kennedy Space Center and the agency's Senior Director of Launch Operations, also offered his thoughts during the Space Florida Board of Directors meeting on June 2nd.
The impact to NASA's planning exists. We obviously had, like our friends in the Department of War and elsewhere in the federal government, had launch needs that were scheduled to be met by Blue, so part of the reason we'll be rooting for them to get back on their feet as quick as possible is some of that planning. But the administrator has spoken to it already in public yesterday and today that while we will refocus some of that launch capacity planning that we have to do at NASA, we are doubling down on the lunar lander. We'll be working with Blue and X on lunar lander technology, and all of that is designed to keep us on path to meet the president's goal, which is to have American boots back on the moon before the end of 2028.
Another key player watching Blue Origin's anomaly investigation will be United Launch Alliance. Both Blue Origin's New Glenn and ULA's Vulcan rockets rely on the BE-4 engine for their main propulsion. As for comment, a ULA spokesperson referred us to Blue Origin for any questions regarding the BE-4 engines. The New Glenn is also a launch provider for national security missions for the U.S. government. Hours before the explosion, the U.S. Space Force awarded a National Security Space Launch Phase 3 Lane 1 task order to Blue Origin to launch a classified payload for the National Reconnaissance Office between the fourth quarter of calendar year 2027 and the first quarter of calendar year 2028. Asked about what role the U.S. Space Force will play in the New Glenn anomaly investigation, Space Force Lieutenant Colonel Brian Scheller sent Spaceflight Now the following statement. When NSSL launch service providers experience anomalies, contract language mandates U.S. government real-time inclusion in both anomaly review boards and failure review boards. The National Security Space Launch Team brings technical expertise with vast experience in launch anomaly reviews, aiding in both the identification of the root cause and the contractor's implementation of corrective actions. As Blue Origin marked 1 week since the explosion, Bezos shared 2 photos of workers assessing the damage, saying, quote, "1 week later, incredible progress. It's a 24/7 operation with a solid path forward to launch this year, helped by a lot of luck. NASA and the U.S. Space Force have both been extremely helpful. The team never tell them the odds." But with multiple investigations still in their early days and eyes around the world watching their recovery, time will tell if in fact Blue Origin can beat the odds and return to flight before the year is through. Reporting for Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith.